Hi, everyone. My name is Justin, aka Video Game Docs, and today, on behalf of Hit Save, we are talking with Bill Litshauer. I think I got that correct.
You nailed it. Yep.
Okay, perfect. But today we're talking with Bill Litshauer from Implicit Conversions to talk about his role with the company in bringing retro games back to newer consoles. So, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Litshauer, CEO of Implicit Conversions. I've been with Implicit for 3 years now. I started in 2022. I was brought on as executive producer to manage a large client. We had a number of games going through a pretty large pipeline. So I was brought on the production side of things. And then over the years, became CEO and handled more on the operations side of things. And then about 7 months ago, one of the co-founders, Robin, and I had a chat, and Robin had gone on a little bit of a vacation, and he came back and he said, "You know what? I want to go back to the tech side of things. That's where my heart really is. I want to code." And so we swapped. So I took on the role of CEO, and now he is um, our co-founder and CGO, which is Chief Gaming Officer. So he's still very, very much involved in everything. But I handle the day-to-day stuff, business development, operations, and overall, grand scheme of things at Implicit Conversions.
Great. Thanks for that introduction. To give a little bit of a background, Bill and I originally met last year at the Save the Games Symposium, if I can pronounce it correctly, over at the Strong Museum up in Rochester. We initially bonded over the fact that we are both Godzilla fans. I see you have a Godzilla figure in the background, so
Oh yeah. Oh
kudos
my
to
God, I'm
that.
wearing my Godzilla shirt
Oh
too.
yeah, I didn't even see
That's a
that.
coincidence. I did
um,
not. Yeah.
I have a little Godzilla figure on my desk here as well. But
Nice.
just to jump into it, what exactly is implicit conversions and how did it start? I know you were brought on kind of in the middle of the company, kind of running itself, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was an early hire. I was probably the fourth or fifth hire. So it's pretty early on. In short, we bring retro games or classic games from the 90s and early 2000s, or basically from that generation, and the 80s as well too, to modern consoles like the Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series X and S, PC like Steam and GOG, and you name it. Like we're trying to get on it. Our vision is to get as many classic games out there as possible. We worked with a large publisher for a while. We worked with them for 3 years, and but the work we did with them was amazing and excellent, and we really enjoyed it. However, they own all of the technology, right? So we reinvested our funds and invested into ourselves, and we built our own proprietary technology. So we built our own NES emulator and ported it to PS4, PS5 last year, and we released the game Micro Mages, which is actually going to be featured at TGS. We have a booth there this year,
Cool.
and um, then immediately after that, we saw a lot of demand for PS1 games, particularly to go on Switch. And so we made it our mission to really focus our efforts on that. And so we developed um, in parallel with Syrup, which is sort of the wrapper for all things emulation that we do, we developed Pancake, which is the PS1 emulator that we have now. And currently, we have about 16 games in production for various clients. Um, we just helped limited run launch Fear Effect on all the different consoles. We have a Fighting Force collection coming out with them as well too. We're working on with Digital Eclipse on Mortal Kombat collection. So we did the PS1 games there. So Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Sub-Zero Mythologies, Mythology Sub-Zero, and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. So that was really exciting because I grew up. That was one of my favorite games, and to just be a part of that was super awesome. And we love working with them as well too. And one game we're really proud of as well too. We're working with Xseed Marvelous on a Japanese game that was never released in North America or Europe called Milano no Arubatu. and that translates to Mano's Odd Job Collection. And it's a really beautiful game with beautiful pixel art, and it really stands the test of time. And so we're working with Hilltop Works. They've done a lot of fan translations over the years,
Yeah.
and so they're helping us with the localization of it, and we've localized it to English. And so we did the text, all graphics, and all audio. So even the
Wow.
songs, like there's an intro song and end credit song, that's all been translated, and it's
Man,
really a special project that's coming out later on in 2025. So
cool.
lots on the go with Pancake. And um, you know, we need to stick with the breakfast theme. So our next big project is Waffle, which is
Nice.
our PS2 emulator, and that's
Ah,
what we're working on behind the scenes. That's still a little ways away, so I don't want to even give a timeline for that yet
yeah,
because we just don't know it.
for sure.
But that's where we're seeing a lot of demand now. There's still a lot of PS1 demand,
Hmm.
but our goal is to get PS2 on Switch too.
Awesome.
That's really what we want to see, be first to market doing that.
It's really cool just to see the announcements that you guys have made. I mean, I know that we're connected on LinkedIn, but also following your socials and stuff like that, seeing the Mortal Kombat trilogy coming back, and then some of the other games that you guys have worked on. Um, just really cool stuff. When when doing this, the mission website or the mission statement on your website does state, to empower developers, studios and publishers to easily bring back their catalog of retro games to modern consoles.
Yeah.
Um, so how exactly do you do that? I guess, can you walk me through the process of, do you just pick a game that you were a huge fan of as a kid and then, cold call the developers and say, hey, can we make this game run on Switch? How does that process work? And then once you're able to kind of get a game ready, or I guess get a game that you think you can get ready, how does it work working, or yeah, how does it work working with the developers and then eventually, making a finished product?
Mhm. So there's three ways we go about that. Um, the first way is work for hire. So sometimes people come to us and they ask us for help on a particular project. Typically, it's PlayStation games that they're trying to get out because that technology is somewhat rare right now. So it's a bit of a niche that we have. Um, um, the other way is with a revenue share agreement. And in that case, usually it's us pitching to a publisher a game that we think will do really well and stand the test of time. I could talk a little bit more about like how we choose that, but rev share agreement is the second one. So in that case, for example, we take on the burden of risk because we do the development work, for free.
Yeah.
And then the publisher is responsible for marketing and deploying on the stores, managing sales and all that stuff. And so because they own the IP, there'll be some kind of a split with the revenue. So it might be like 60-40, for example, where they get 60%, we get 40% until our costs are recouped. And then, then it drops to 60-30 and then,
Yeah.
or 70-30, sorry. So we might have that rev share. Even with work for hire, we may pitch companies or publishers and pick a few games that we really like and that we really want to do or we think will do really well.
Hmm.
And that has some success as well too. I'd say probably 90% of our work, 80% of our work is work for hire right now.
Gotcha.
But we do have some rev share agreements that are going on. And the third way is a new way that we're not really ready yet. We're in the alpha stage, and that's our SDK. And that's
Gotcha.
what we saw was after we launched Micromages,
Hmm.
we started getting homebrew developers reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, can you port our game to Switch? Can you
Mm.
port our game to PlayStation?"
Yeah.
And it's not that we didn't want to; it's just that we didn't have, it wasn't reasonable in terms of costs for us to be
Yeah.
able to do that because the number of units sold on a rev share agreement might be 500 units. That's it's just not enough.
Yeah.
And so from a business perspective, that didn't make sense. But then we started getting more and more of these, and so we thought, Why don't we create an SDK for them? And then we can empower them, like truly empower them. We'll give them syrup. They'll have a license to use it, and they can port their own games with it. And so we have a couple of developers on board right now in the alpha program. We have a wait list if people want to join. And with our alpha, they can take a stab at it. They can add some features to their game, like widescreen mode or whatnot, and um, they can publish themselves onto the Nintendo Store or PlayStation or whatnot. But how do we actually choose the game? So when it's fire, if they us, we don't get really to choose. It's just here's the game.
Yeah.
Although we might make recommendations. For example, if they're doing a collection of say 3 games, and we think the fourth one, even though it wasn't as popular as the first 3, maybe the fourth one is still kind of like super niche and was only released in Japan. Maybe that'd be really interesting for people to see. So
Hmm.
there's an opportunity there to bring back yet another classic to the
Yeah.
public. So we'll pitch that. But typically, we go through a number of different scenarios to try and pick out our games. The first one is there even a demand for the game?
Hmm.
Is it going to sell? And unfortunately, we do have to talk money, and money is a big part of the equation, both for the publisher and for us, especially if it's going to be a rev share agreement, and we're going to have to eat that cost ourselves. Um, and it has to be enough money for the publisher to get out of bed in the morning. It can't just be
Yeah.
a few $1,000, 5 grand. Even 20 grand, 100 grand. They're not interested. In most
For
cases, they're
sure.
not interested.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. So we have to pitch either a large collection of games, like their entire catalog,
Hmm.
or a bunch of collections, or a game that we think will really do well.
Yeah.
Like a triple A, what was a triple A game, in the '90s, for example. So that's difficult metric to determine, but we look at a number of different things. We have our Discord channel, and so we have a poll each month, and we find out like what games are popular and which ones they'd like to see next. And well, we can't do a lot of those games immediately. We're keeping track of them all and
Hmm.
the votes, and so that gives us a little bit of information. We also look on Reddit and the various subreddits for retro
Yeah.
gaming. We'll look on PSN profiles, and we'll look at what community chatter and other Discord channels, and use evidence. And we use YouTube as well too. So for example, if there's a game that's really getting talked about and like, why hasn't this game come out yet?
Yeah.
They should be doing this game. We'll reference that in our pitch and say, look, this guy with 1.2 million subscribers did a video, and there's like a ton of positive comments. There's a lot of like momentum behind this game. We think that this can do well. So
Yeah.
that's part of the pitch as well too, to try and guess or guesstimate how much revenue the game might bring in based on previous units that were sold and like what the repurchase rate might be on a game. And then the second question, which is arguably the most important one, is it in licensing hell? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that is unfortunately it eliminates a number of games right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it's we get a lot of, why didn't you do this game? Like, why won't you do Simpsons Hit and Run?
Yeah.
Because it's in licensing hell, because different large companies and small companies and individuals own little bits and pieces of it, and to get
Yeah.
all those puzzle pieces together is, for all intents and purposes, impossible.
Yeah.
And these agreements are old documents, like the source code.
Hmm.
They're lost in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
or parts of them, addendums are lost, like additions that were made. Or if somebody passed away and it was handed down to someone's estate, they don't even know that they have it. No one knows how to contact them because they have it, and so it's just lost, it's just
Yeah.
gone. And so those contracts are missing. Sometimes you have almost the entire thing, but like one track in the game, like a music track, a song, they won't allow the license to be redone,
Hmm.
and the creators of the game, the IP holders, don't want to change the integrity of the game, so they won't allow us to swap it. And we have the technology to swap assets fairly easily,
Yeah.
um, with our reverse engineering. But if they don't allow it, then that's off the table as well too. And so that's a real shame, especially when that happens,
Yeah.
because you can kind of like mimic the sound and try and keep the integrity of the game and the feel and emotion that it evokes. But
Hmm.
so that's a big one. We also look at, is it a game that we can modernize for today's audiences?
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. I was playing. I remember when I got Far Cry on my computer. Well, take a step back. I remember when I got Far Cry on my oldest computer,
Yeah.
not my oldest, but like an old computer, and
Hmm.
I couldn't even run it. And then I got a new computer and I was able to run it, and I thought it was the most beautiful game I had ever played in my life. It was
For
just
sure.
gorgeous. I played it on this computer because
Yep.
it was on sale on Steam, so I was like, I'm going to rebuy it, and I couldn't believe it. Like it was so pixelated. Like the graphics were, I don't want to say terrible, but like compared to modern standards,
Yeah.
different ball game. I got used to it after about 10 minutes, and I
Hmm.
was just fully immersed in the game again and played all the way through. But for some people, they look at games in rose-colored glasses. They remember it a certain way, and then when they look at it now, also you used to play on a CRT. Now you're playing on hot, 4K monitors or televisions. Completely
Yeah.
changes the feel of it. So we want to be able to add modern features, like up rendering, for example. Like some games
Hmm.
lend themselves well to up rendering,
Yep.
others not so much. Of course, we want like save states and rewind, and maybe add like pillar box art, or like make use of that, like we did in Micro Mages, where we actually use that as part of the gaming area.
Yeah.
Um, um, and sometimes, like we can add like a moves list in a fighting game, so it's
Hmm.
easier to practice. I don't want to say fatalities, but like finishing moves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to do that. Of course, it's got to be technically feasible. We have to
Yeah.
have an emulator for it. We can emulate a lot of different consoles right now, like NES and Genesis and SNES and a lot of those, 8 and 16-bit ones. Since when you get into 32-bit, it gets a little more complicated. We don't have an N64 emulator, for example. That's notoriously difficult to do. We've had some interest in Wii games,
Yeah.
but we don't have a Wii emulator. And unless if there's a ton of demand for it, it just doesn't make sense for us to invest years worth of work into
For
building
sure.
one from scratch.
Yeah.
So there's always that tension where we have like projects that we really want to do because they'd be so much fun, and we know the community would love them. We just know it, but it's just like, the revenue won't be there, and we're a business, so we have to make those difficult decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
And then, lastly, it blends in with the last one is, do we have the resources available to do it? Do we have the expertise to do it?
Hmm.
And in most cases, we have the expertise, we just don't have the time. So
Yeah.
we're working on our PS2 emulator. We have a PS3 emulator, like kind of happening in the very, very background,
Hmm.
but it's very slow moving. But we're focusing more on PS2 because that's where the demand is
Yeah.
right now. And when we talk with publishers, their question is, when's PS2? How could you make it come faster?
Yeah.
So that's where we're going. So that's how we choose the games, and then actually working on the games themselves. We don't need the source code, which is handy. Although sometimes we're given source code, but
Hmm.
it's sometimes helpful, sometimes not very helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for not the version that was actually released. It's you never know what you're going to get. But yeah, we'll work with the publisher, and we determine what features they want, what platforms they want it on, a timeline. We set milestones, for the alpha, the beta, and release candidates. We help them
Hmm.
with compliance testing. We do some of the artwork for them. We do the trophy design, and
Wow.
then our engineers do the reverse engineering to figure out if they can, or if the trophies first are possible, and then they actually implement them as well too. And this whole time we're working close with the publishers, sharing ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
Um, and we're a pretty flat company, so we have QAs writing trophies. I wrote some trophies for a couple of games.
Hmm.
It's just whoever has the time and feels like doing it and puts their hand up, it gets to do it. So that's kind of the fun of working here, one of the pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then eventually the game goes out. We help with setting up on the stores as well too, because the whole compliance testing and submission process is a beast.
Yeah,
And
certainly.
there's usually issues, and almost always there's issues with submission, just little things forgot to be checked, and little IDs here, and
Yeah.
little setting toggles and settings. So we help with that as well too. Um, Typically, there is a third party involved. So, for example, when we were working with Limited Run on Fear Effect, well,
Hmm.
Square owns the IP for that, and so
Yeah.
Square is taking a look at it as well too.
Gotcha.
So Square is it goes from us to Limited Run, they bless it, then it goes to Square, they look at it, they give their feedback, goes back to Limited Run, goes back to us, and then so we kind of go in that chain back and forth, and we're all communicating with each other and sharing ideas and bug reports, and we try and centralize everything. And it's the challenge that we didn't realize was going to be so challenging is having multiple games. Like if we accept a project that's like 4 games,
Hmm.
each with 4 milestones,
Yeah.
we used to do 4 milestones. Now we've cut it down to 3 because it's just too much
Wow.
on like 7 platforms.
Yeah,
It's a lot of testing, and it's a
for
lot
sure.
of, so we didn't anticipate how big the testing curve would be and how much tracking needed to be done in terms of all the different things. So like the technology itself is challenging, and optimizing for Switch, for example, is
Hmm.
hard.
Yeah.
Um, but there's just so much to track. So as we've learned and had more deals, I've trimmed the number of milestones down. There used to be one like first playable product, and then trophy design, and then
Yeah.
alpha, and then pre-beta, beta. But now it's just like alpha, beta, release candidate. That's how we can't do more.
You had to streamline
Uh,
it a little bit.
yeah, we had to streamline it, and then we got to give them all those packages, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
here's your GOG package, here's the Steam package, here's the all the different platforms. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it can range, for some games are as short as 3 months to do, and
Interesting.
others can take a much longer. Like Milano has taken us longer, but that's because there's localization
Yeah,
involved, and that's a whole different ball game.
certainly. And
Yeah,
I know that, um, you know, my background is in marketing and video production specifically, and I know the difficulties that it can be to provide different versions of the product, or just provide the product initially. Maybe you think you're in the final stage and you're like, here it is, but then they have other feedback that comes in last second.
yeah,
But also, like you were saying, balancing all of these. I mean, you said it earlier, you have, I think 16 currently kind of in the pipeline. And
yeah,
so, like, I can only imagine how, difficult it can be to ensure that you've got them all in order and something doesn't accidentally fall to the back burner while other things are going on.
yeah.
But you covered a lot there. There were a few things that I wanted to kind of touch on for a bit. One was the
Sure.
SDK that you had mentioned, which, first off, I just think that's a really cool idea, um, because, like you said, developers were approaching you about their homebrew games and saying, can you help us? And I think, unfortunately, and this kind of ties into something else you were saying, unfortunately, some of the preservation that we look at is a business. Unfortunately, sometimes companies, a lot of companies, especially if they're the license holders, have to look at it in a dollar sign format.
Yeah,
Because sure, it would be nice if Square, Nintendo, Eidos, any of these companies just like did it and, didn't care about how much money they made. But that's not, unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And so kind of going back to that, I think it's cool that, you guys were able to recognize, hey, we can't do this on an individual basis, but let's try to think of a way to still help these guys, because I think that, you know, whether it's a Mortal Kombat trilogy or a homebrew title that someone made for the NES that they just want to port it to a new console, that's all games, and that's all games preservation.
yeah,
I think to the community, no matter what game it is, independent, homebrew, triple A, all of it matters, especially in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's really cool that you guys wanted to still do something rather than just saying we can't and then like leaving it
Yeah,
at that.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
which I'm sure that's also provided its own challenges. Trying to come up with an SDK and then trying to come up with a way for it to make sense as a business.
Yeah, to be transparent, we haven't come up with a business model for it
Hmm.
yet. I mean, it's still an alpha, so that doesn't really matter just yet. But maybe it's going to be like the Unity model, free fiasco, um,
Hmm.
or maybe it'll be the Unreal model.
Yeah,
Some type of license. It might be just a flat rate. We're just not sure
yeah,
yet. Um, so we're still trying to figure that out
for sure.
ourselves and seeing how much work it really takes on our end. Because right now, being in the alpha stage, we're helping them set up things, and it requires not a full-time resource, but and it also requires the person using the SDK to be a developer. I
Yes.
mean, it's not super friendly in
Yeah.
terms of the UI for the everyday person who's like, I'm going to port this game. It's not that
100%.
easy. Actually, an interesting point is I was going to say there's still a barrier of getting it up on the stores. Like you still have to submit, even if let's say you're going to do it yourself. But so,
Hmm.
Justin, you decide to make a game. You use our SDK to port it to Switch. Now you have to go through the Nintendo lot check, and then
Yeah.
and you want to port it to it. That's not an easy process. I mean, it's a lot of
No.
setup. That's gonna be a big barrier for
Yeah.
people. Yeah, it's tough, and it's interesting. We talked with one publisher about the SDK um, because they wanted to do games with us, but the price point was really low, and so we thought,
Hmm.
okay, well maybe the SDK would work in this case. Maybe we can make it work.
Yeah.
And they did not respond well to the SDK. They thought, wow, this is like a nightmare because you're going to flood the market with games that don't have good quality,
Yeah.
because just anybody can do it now. And it's like, well,
Well,
sure, but I mean, that's what YouTube is now. That's
yeah.
what like all the social channels are. And the ones who produce great content rise to the top. And the ones who are serious about it are going to go through the lot check and they're going to go through that.
Hmm.
And if they're willing to do that, it's probably a game they're pretty passionate about
Yeah.
and that they believe in. And if they believe in it, it's probably a good game, like
Yeah.
so because it's a hard process. So we push back and we haven't set up a deal with that publisher yet, but um, it, yeah, I agree. It's an interesting challenge.
Yeah. And, something that you kind of talked about earlier with the licensing is, I'll kind of wrap this into a question. But, my last conversation that I had with Gabe Durham from Boss Fight Books, he was telling me kind of similar stories where, they're not actively taking games and porting them to new consoles like you guys are, but a lot of their authors that they partner with to create these books, they do try to contact and they do try to talk with original developers. And I think he told me a story about how the author was working on a Kingdom Hearts book, and they got in contact with Square, and Square was like, yeah, sure, like, do whatever you want. You can talk to this developer, talk to this developer. And then Disney came in and they were like, no, we don't, nothing to do with it. And it like, I can only imagine that you guys have run into similar issues where maybe it's not specifically Disney, but maybe you do have something that is going pretty well. And then all of a sudden another company comes in and they're like, well, actually, we own the rights to this thing that's in there.
Yeah,
And we say no.
yeah.
How do how do you resolve that? Is it one of those situations where if it's something completely major, you just, you kind of are like, okay, well, we got to cut our losses and figure out a way to move on? Or is it, like you said with the music track, do you just kind of try to recreate the feeling? How do you go through that?
So in a lot of cases, there's not much we can do as the developer. There just isn't. It's a legal issue. It's interesting because some of the publishers we've talked to, like a developer can approach any publisher and say, hey, we'd like to license this franchise for you for and have exclusive rights for 5 years. And we're going
Mhm.
to produce, one or two games during that time frame. And then you're going to get a percentage of the revenue. And that publisher will be like, fantastic. Here's the license as is.
Yeah.
So they will not guarantee, in most cases, they will not guarantee that that license is perfectly okay. So
Wow.
you don't know necessarily if what you're getting is like, because they don't necessarily know if they own
Yeah.
it for sure.
It's just what they have.
Because it's just what they have,
Yeah.
and it's just based on the documentation we have, it looks like we own this. But here you go. Good luck. And yeah, so that's a risky publishing model. It works for a lot of groups, especially with modern franchises, because all that documentation is in order. But
Mhm.
for this older stuff, where there's a lot of uh, parts that are unclear,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a risky proposition to license the rights to a game, which is going to cost, say $1 million for a nice a good franchise,
Yeah.
only to find out that you can't actually release it. And so at that point, you're really just getting your lawyers to talk to their lawyers and trying to work something out. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, we have a perfectly, we did a game. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the game, but
Mhm.
you would definitely know it. We worked on it. It was a PS1 game. We were so excited for it. It was engineering complete. We worked on it for 2 3 months. In fact, we had to rush to get it done because it was like, oh, we got to get it done for this particular date because it's going to be
Oh,
launching in
wow.
like May or something.
Yeah.
And we were so excited for it. And then it went to the third party and didn't hear back, didn't hear back, didn't hear back. Then we finally heard back and said, oh, sorry, the track, that a track that's being used in that game, um, we can't get the license for it. And they won't allow replacement. And
Oh, man.
I'm sorry, so sorry,
Yeah.
but it's shelved indefinitely, which
Woof.
basically means it's not coming. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's unfortunately, you take the loss and you just move on. But yeah, that does happen. I mean, the legal aspect is really tricky. There's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of deep corners and recesses of the earth that you have to go through to try and find the IP holders and the license holders for all the different parts. Like some games are just right off the bat, we won't they won't even be discussed. Like if it's a sports game,
Yeah.
that's not happening. Like those
No.
are, unless if it was a sports game that was like all fake players, like Baseball
Yeah.
Simulator 1000 for the
Yeah.
NES, like that, like that's all unrealistic names. But if it's like NHL 94,
Mhm.
well, that used actual players, and the NHL Players Association had to, license that, and those,
Yeah.
who knows. So that's a disaster. Plus, there's all kinds of hidden advertising in there. They're wearing
Mhm.
Bauer goalie gear, or Adidas
Yeah.
jerseys, and you can't show those logos anymore because they don't have permission to do that. And
Yeah.
it's all kinds of stuff. And car games, anything with cars, with brands like real cars,
Yeah.
um, they're they have short-term licenses as well too. Anything with music, like if you were to fire up Rock Band right now,
Oh, yeah. I can't
you're like,
imagine.
yeah, there's like half your songs are gone because the
Yeah.
licenses have expired, and then you just can't play them anymore. They're gone.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
terrible.
I mean,
Yeah.
on the sports conversation, I think back to, some of my early sports game memories were playing Madden, um,
Mhm.
on my GameCube, and I don't think there was a second in that game where you weren't getting hit with a player who was explicitly named,
Yeah.
a voice of someone who was an actual announcer in the NFL or ESPN, so
Yeah.
you have to get them, but also music because Madden used licensed music all
That's
throughout the
right.
2000s, and they still
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine the nightmare that
Yeah.
attempting to, undertake would be.
Yeah.
Um, but, overall, with the kind of work that you guys are doing to, help other publishers, developers bring their licensees, their games that they already have onto modern consoles, what role do you see implicit conversions playing in video game preservation and historical documentation? You know, how do you see yourselves versus maybe how others see you as well?
We're an engineering shop, first and foremost, but we're all really passionate about what we do. We're all retro gamers, and we're all kind of older, so we all played the games from the 80s and 90s. It just kind
Yeah.
of worked out that way. Our role is to provide tools, and the tools are the emulators, and they're legal emulators. We've done the work to make sure everything is completely legal, and there's no risk to the publishers
Yeah.
by publishing a PlayStation game on Switch. We've
Yeah.
gone through that exercise for them. The SDK will one day get there, we hope, to expand that audience, but we really see ourselves as a tool.
Hmm.
And when we work with Digital Eclipse and Limited Run and other ones we're talking with, um, you know, some people say, "Well, aren't they your competitors?" Like, well, not really. We're all in this together. Like, we
Yeah.
see it more as like a group. Like, we just fill a particular niche, which happens to be PlayStation right now.
Yeah.
They are excellent at doing collections and the physical side of things, and that's not our thing. Like, we're not experts at that. We don't have people on the team who know how to do that.
Yeah.
But we have engineers who came from the open source community. Most of them have worked in the open source community and have um, um, corporate experience as well too.
Yeah.
So that really helps because it brings a really nice blend and a business sense to the work as well too.
For
And
sure.
so I think, yeah, the short answer is we see ourselves as a tool, an
Yeah.
engineering tool that publishers could take advantage of and use. Um, I don't mean that in the sense of like a negative way, but like take
Hmm.
advantage of the tool to preserve more games and
Certainly.
release more for the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's based on what I understand and based off what you guys have kind of shown off on your website and your social medias, I think that's a pretty succinct way of putting it. And I think that is, a fair point is like, I kind of thought a similar thing when I saw on your website that you were partnering with Digital Eclipse and Limited Run Games. But, I think overall I think a lot of the preservation community and historical aspect of video games community, it's kind of like a, rising tide floats all boats type of situation where it's like
Hmm.
we all just care about these games and that's what it comes down to. Hit
Yeah.
Save and Video Game History Foundation aren't competing. They're kind
Yeah.
of just two different niches.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the role that Implicit is filling in.
Yeah. Yeah. And we recognize that unlike books, which can be reproduced indefinitely and exactly,
Hmm.
in all different formats, but most easily, of course, in paper, um, you have to have the original console or you have to use emulation. There's
Yeah.
only two ways you can do it.
Yeah.
There's no other option, unfortunately. And the original hardware, they're not going to last forever. Like, we still get to play them. There's still some CRTs out there that you can buy on Kijiji or eBay or whatever, but they're dying.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a rush. There's like an urgency to really preserve these titles and pieces of culture,
Yeah.
not just the nostalgia. The nostalgia itself is a reason to do it, but it's also the culture and the
Hmm.
cultural impact. A lot of the movies we watch today, and a lot of the books we read, and the comic books, and so much of the content we see is based on franchises that were created 30 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. Like the Super Mario Brothers movie,
Yeah.
like that wouldn't have existed if Super Mario
Nope.
Brothers didn't come out.
Yeah.
Like, and it's still going strong.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's tons of them. Resident Evil, Silent Hill. There's, I like the horror genre, so I pick those
That
ones. I
makes sense.
gravitate
Yeah.
towards those ones.
That's
But
fair.
but but yeah, I mean, that's why there's so many shows and movies. They just keep coming out with them because there's an appetite for that, and they've created a universe
Hmm.
that's like alive and should be preserved. And so it's always really exciting when we see on various platforms, some games coming back. not just from those big names that have are still like mainstream, but the smaller ones too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. So many hidden gems that are out there that no one's even played, and why we believe so firmly in Milano.
Hmm.
No one's seen it, no one's played it outside of Japan. Very few. Some people have, of course, but
Yeah.
um, this is a fun little cozy game, and it was part of Wholesome Direct, and it just fits into that. It's got that life sim aspect to it, which is still really popular. It's got the pixel
Very
art, which is
popular.
still very popular.
Yeah.
It's got the decoration and like of your home. It's got mini games. Like it's got sort of all the things that make a modern game popular, and that existed back in '97. So it's
Yeah.
cool to be able to bring those games back too that aren't necessarily blockbusters, but have their own role to play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a conversation that has been had plenty of times, but I think it is a conversation still worth bringing up. Like with the silent film era and a majority of those early films that might have established a standard in how films were created, how films were produced, are lost to time, and so it's one of those things where it is great to have games like Mario Brothers, because it is a foundational game, but it is also important to have the other games that maybe a majority of people didn't play, but maybe it was the game that did influence another game that did become
Yeah,
very big. Um,
yeah,
it's like it's all a part of one giant puzzle at the end of the day.
yeah,
Like they're all
yeah.
connected in some way. Um, and with that, what you know are there any particular eras or regions of games or of gaming history that you personally feel are underexplored? I know you're a fan of horror genre, so maybe that might be it. What do you think?
Uh, it's always sad when a genre of game kind of disappears.
Hmm.
Um, a couple of genres come to mind that have basically disappeared. I mean, there's the odd one that comes out now, but it's not like the glory days. Real-time strategy games, they
Yeah.
were all the rage, going back to Warcraft and StarCraft and uh, countless others. You just don't see them too often anymore. I know there's a couple studios doing a few now and stuff, which is cool, but to bring those back, I know there's been remasters, which have,
Hmm.
so, but um, it's I think that's underserved a little bit because there's a bunch of really good ones that are probably going missing. Yeah. So one of the games I played countless hours was Disciples 2 Dark Prophecy, which was it was to fill in the time when I was playing Diablo 2.
Hmm.
I needed something else to play, and this was a dark, gothic, dark turn-based strategy game, and it was
Yeah.
unbelievable. It was so good. The artwork was amazing. The sound was amazing. And then, Disciples 3 came out, and it was kind of a bust. Didn't really go anywhere. And then it was rekindled as like another Disciples version, and it's not bad, but like
Hmm.
I'd love to see a remake of the proper Disciples too. Like
Yeah.
those turn-based strategy games. There's a lot of great ones out there, and the genre is just not as popular. So it's perhaps underserved. The other one too is, if you remember, like Eye of the Beholder and
Hmm.
those types of games where you'd go through in 3D, pseudo 3D.
Yeah.
Um, those are, you don't see those too much at all anymore. But it'd be nice to bring some of those back as well too.
Yeah. 100%. And I think um something that I guess can be I think it kind of wraps in with the turn-based strategy games and some of the pseudo 3D kind of dungeon crawly
Yeah,
types of games is I think that there is a pretty like underutilized, underexplored part of gaming history that's specific to just PC gaming in general.
yeah,
And I think one of the challenges to that is like, how can we bring that back? But how can we also make that available to a wider audience? Not just, you have to own a PC to play this game,
Yeah,
but how could we convert this initial 90s, Windows XP, Windows
mm,
95 PC game into a game that you can play on your Switch? Um,
yeah,
has Implicit had any experience with that, or not so much so far, but it's something that maybe you'd want to explore?
yeah. We're definitely exploring it. We have had requests,
Hmm.
even recently, uh, to explore that. Um, the challenge, it's emulating PC is possible for sure, but
Yeah,
it's challenging because there's so many more variables to worry
yeah,
about because every box is different.
yeah,
And also the controls, porting or mapping keyboard controls, especially if like say 23 keys are being used on the
yeah,
keyboard, and mapping that to a joystick is really challenging and
yeah,
comes off as clumsy and just not fun. So
yeah.
that has to be figured out, and we have explored that, how it could be done, like how you could mimic a mouse movement,
Hmm.
how you can mimic certain like look and feel. um, but yeah, PC is, we haven't done any PC ports, but it is on our radar for sure
Gotcha.
because we've had some requests for it. But
Cool.
yeah, not yet.
Awesome. Well, I definitely look forward to any PC, conversions that you end up doing. But I do want to say thank you so much for just having this conversation. I think it's been really cool just to learn more about implicit conversions, the work that you guys do. And I'm hopeful, and I know that the hit save community will hopefully enjoy hearing it all about it. Before we wrap up, though, where can viewers or people that are interested in implicit, whether that's just people that want to support you, people that want to get your games, or maybe developers and publishers that might want to reach out, where
Yeah,
can they find you?
best bet is to go to implicitconversions.com, and we've got demo content of a lot of our stuff there, and join our Discord channel as well too. Our Discord is a really amazing community,
Mhm.
really engaged community who's really passionate about retro games and classics. So I encourage people to join that and join the conversation.
Perfect. So you heard it here first, folks. You can go to their website. I believe it is implicitconversions.com, and learn about their products that they have. You can learn about Syrup a little bit on their website, and then as well join the Discord. I'm a part of it. I know I voted on a few games already in there, mainly, unfortunately, Nintendo 64 and GameCube games, which you mentioned, at least the Nintendo 64 is pretty difficult. So I might be waiting a while for that. But awesome work that you guys are doing. I'm excited to see the Mortal Kombat trilogy, how that turns out. And I'm also excited, for any future products that you're able to show off and announce. But just want to say thank you again for joining us, everyone. This is Bill Lichauer with Implicit Conversations. Bill, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, Justin.
Thank you. And everyone, real quick, this, of course, is being produced in partnership with HitSave. HitSave is a nonprofit 501(c)(3) organization focused on games preservation and video game history in general. So if you enjoyed this conversation that I've had today with Bill, go check out hitsave.org to learn more information about the organization. And you can find a donate button there. You can also join the Discord for us as well, and just kind of learn more about the organization and how you might be able to get involved. Thanks again, Bill, for joining us, and thanks for HitSave for allowing this all to happen in the first place.